Hey everyone, Carrie back here with Homeschool Coffee Break, where we help you stop the overwhelm so you can actually take a coffee break from your homeschool. Um, Today we are here with one of my friends, Lisa Garrison, and Lisa has got a lot of wisdom on homeschooling, especially in the midst of like everything going crazy. And so, Lisa, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Carrie. Appreciate it. Um, yes, I totally feel you when you say that about living through the chaos. Uh, yeah,
We'll dive into that. So we're going to dive into trials and all that kind of stuff. But before we're going to talk about how do we homeschool when really life is going crazy. And I don't mean just like driving to soccer practice. I mean real trials that Lisa has been walking through with her family. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we dive into that, Lisa, would you just sort of tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
sure. Well, my name is Lisa Garrison, and I run God's Given Grace and Vibrant Home Life websites. On the God's Given Grace, especially, I help families with special needs and homeschooling. All the lovely craziness that comes with that, the medical, the trials, all of it. Married to my high school sweetheart, and I have four amazing boys and my fur baby, who's actually from where you are in Texas. She came to us as a rescue, and so gotta always mention her. 'Cause she's a part of my life too. So
Well, that's
yeah,
exciting. Four boys. That can keep you going a lot with all boys and all their energy. So, well, let's just dive right into this. Homeschooling can be hard even when everything is going well. But when life isn't going great, you're homeschooling in the midst of some huge trial. Can you tell people just a little bit about what it looks like to homeschool in the middle of trials?
sure. So to give a little backstory, one of my boys in particular is my 8-year-old son. He was born with a brain tumor, and it was something that at first they weren't even sure was a tumor. But as he got older, they realized, yes, this is definitely a tumor. Um, and in 2021, they decided to do his first surgery to try to remove this tumor. Um, it wasn't fully successful because between 2021 and present, he had developed seizures that have been crazy and very scary, and the tumor has started to grow back. And so we are literally 13 days away from his next brain surgery and hopefully his last. Um, I'm very hopeful. I know God's got big plans for this kid. So, um, in with all of that and the wonderful number of doctor's visits and therapy visits and testing and everything that comes along with it, the chaos basically. We've had to figure out a different way to homeschool. And so we homeschool through the trials. Um, One of the biggest things that we do is we homeschool year round, and that allows us to take off in the longer periods of time that we need to for procedures or testing or doctor's appointments that just keep coming up because they don't ever end. um, and we've also embraced a lot of life schooling in those times when the chaos is just very, very chaotic. Um, so that's kind of how we homeschool and why we homeschool that way. It's one of the reasons. My oldest is also has some medical issues as well, and so we deal with that and his homeschooling, and so um, with all of his trials that he's been dealing with as well. And so that's kind of
Yeah.
how we get through the chaos, I guess.
Well, that's the beauty of homeschooling. You can make your own choices about what to do. And, some of us, I mean, I was a traditional Labor Day to Memorial Day, but I didn't have to take breaks in the middle of the year for medical issues. And so, I mean, you can hear Lisa's story. We've been praying for their family through all of this. Really, by the time y'all listen to it, like we're recording it before the surgery. By the time this publishes, it'll be the day after their surgery. So, who knows, maybe we'll have some really good updates, but they have been in and out of hospitals and everything. And so I just think that's the beauty and the freedom of homeschooling and doing that year round. I love that idea. I do know that many homeschool families are trying to give a well-rounded education, a tailor-made, and sometimes maybe I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And yet, when you're in the midst of medical situations and trials, how can you really give your kids a comprehensive education, a holistic education that really prepares them for some of the challenges that they may face?
That being that we homeschool during like a lot of these trials and things like that, the opportunity to life school has really played a vital role in how we our kids learn. Um, we as a homeschooling family, one of the biggest things that I know for ours especially is we want the tailored approach to our children and their education. And so um during the chaotic periods of time, we still are able to give our kids the education that they need. It's just, it looks different. So our children, they're able to practice these valuable life skills that um, help them to be successful adults later on down the road, while still learning and embracing the things that they would typically be learning from a book. Um, it just looks different for our kids, and it still gives them that well-rounded education. But one thing that I've said a number of times to different families is like, you don't have to educate from a book. It doesn't have to be, here's a whole bunch of worksheets, you need to get this done. That's not how, if you think about it as adults, we learn more with the hands-on, or we learn more by whatever our like learning or what is that called? How we how we learn the best is how we are going to learn the best. And so if we have a child that is hands-on, they want to be in their with their hands in the slime and making the cookies and things like that. Or if they are the ones that are, you know, listening, wanting to listen to or watch videos, that's how they're going to learn best. Or if they're reading books, that's how they're going to learn best. And so being able to embrace that and then use the challenges, so to speak, to tailor it to their way of learning, so to speak, it helps to embrace the what is the word I'm looking for? The tailored approach. Sorry, could not think of that for a second. The tailored approach. And so especially in the difficult seasons, I find that like homeschooling really does allow for us to focus on cultivating this resilience and this adaptability and problem solving skills within my kids themselves, which then obviously is something that we really need later on down the road in life, because you want them to be able to learn to manage their emotions and to cope with the stress, because stress is just an everyday given and as an adult. And so if they're able to develop those growth mindsets earlier on, it's this invaluable trait that is navigating them in the ups and downs that are to come later on down the road. Um, and it also like provides this experience and this way to shape their character, so that they're able to equip themselves with you know, time management or self-discipline, or an ability to just preserve through the different challenges that are being thrown at them. And of course, leaning into God. Like one of the biggest things that um is our default is it's kind of a and if we're gonna homeschool, like if we're gonna not homeschool in a sense and we're gonna life school, one of the biggest things is always for us is biblical. We open up the Bible and we read, and even if that's all what we get to through the day, like that is like, okay, I achieved homeschooling for the day because that it makes me feel like we've set this foundation up for them that gives them that holistic approach in a sense, and ensuring that they're not just acquiring these academic knowledge, but also developing the emotional and faith and life skills that are going to help them thrive. That helps.
That is so good. And that's the thing. Homeschooling is so much more than just academics, you know, and you hit so many great things about resilience, problem solving, adaptability, and then character building. But I just love leave it to God. And that is so hard when you're in the midst of trials. We want to control, but it's an illusion because let's face it, we are not in control. And the values you're setting for your kids. So if y'all are freaking out in the midst of trials, you're going to set the value of freaking out. And if you are leaving it to God and making sure that you read your Bible as a family every day, then that's a different set of values. So that is awesome. I love that. So if I know y'all drive to and from and everywhere, and you've got trials going on. Do you have any suggestions so that, I mean, you've talked about life schooling, meaning it's not just sit down with a textbook, but do you have any strategies or routines that y'all have set so that learning doesn't really stop during the midst of all the activity in the midst of a trial?
Or it's funny, I am the most organized in my family. My husband jokes a lot and says that he would be completely lost without me. And honestly, unless we were driving somewhere, I could see that happening because he's great and he figures it out and he's a great problem solver. But there's just so much that goes on with being in between the hospitals and the interruptions with the different medical issues and the doctor's appointments and therapies and then trying to fit in schooling and work and just the everyday life household things that I need to get done. It really is this like balancing act. And so some things more specific to homeschooling that I make sure to do is I use a number of different facets to help keep me organized. I have paper planners that I pull out and I make my daily, okay, this is what must get done, this is what should get done, and this is if I had the time, it would be nice I could get this done. And then we also utilize technology because we live in an era where technology is amazing. Um, One of those things that we use is our Google Calendar. I have our family set up so that any appointments that are happening, including anything that has to do with homeschooling, it is put on the calendar so that they can see, hey, this is what you need to do today. Or this is an appointment that we're going to have today. And then we also utilize things like Trello and Airtable. I love Trello. We have actually a Trello board that is all just of our recipes. And that has been a godsend because I can be like, what are we making for dinner? Okay, here's the recipe. I don't even have to like pull out some paper or a cookbook. It's all just right there for us. But like using these organization tools, which is one way that we help to um like keep everything together and keep a routine. But some other things are kind of like our no-goes, like or our must-dos. Like I said before, one of our must-dos is we need to be intentional every day. Our family is intentional about reading the Bible. We also incorporate our like faith-based lessons in the other things that we are doing. So if it's science or history or even math, like we will somehow tie in how God is a part of it because ultimately God is a part of every subject, whether we think of it that way or not. Um, and then we take breaks and do things like for especially for my toddler, he loves music, and so we have kids worship music on all day long. Like it's so fun to see like you've got some kids that are out there singing like Baby Shark, and my kid is out here he's he's singing church songs that you hear in church, and it's like I'm like, yes, score for me because like I just feel like okay, I'm doing something right here. And then some other things like we do is like I'm a very visual person, and so I have Bible quotes all over my house, and I
Mm.
purposely pick out Bible quotes that are ones that embrace our what the season we're in. And so right now we're in this season of trust and surrender. And so a lot of the Bible quotes that I have going on around me are comfort ones that I sometimes I think it's like just for me, but then I realize no, like I have two and a half kids that can read. Like my 8-year old, he's a little bit behind in reading, and I'm perfectly fine with that because his circumstances make it a little more challenging for him to be able and be at the level that other 8-year olds are at. And I'm like, this is God's plan. This is how God wants it to be. He's going to read and he's just going to be a little bit later than others. Oh well, like that. I just embrace that because it if I don't, it takes away and if I compare, I think that's the biggest thing. It's that comparison trap. If I'm comparing my son to other 8-year olds, I'm only setting myself up for a trap because that's not the 8-year-old that God created for me. And being able to embrace that and be like, okay, I've adapted to the fact that don't have a typical routine and we don't have a typical schedule that other 8-year-olds follow. That's what God wants. He'll have him reading and catching back up into all of the things that he's been left out of eventually. It's just right now, that's not the season we're in. And so that's kind of how we do routines. Like we just I would say one other big thing that I'm a very huge component of is we embrace gratitude. So there is this science that shows that the same place in our brains that we find anxiety and worry is where our gratitude also stems from. And so if we are like neurologically speaking, it's in our amygdala and it's this like key player and where we process our emotions and things like that. But if we look at it from a different perspective, if we're training our brains to focus on these positive aspects, then we are able to, be thankful for things and appreciate what God is putting in front of us. It's going to suppress that response for stress and fear. And then it's going to do this intricate dance, so to speak, where the brain is going to show that, hey, gratitude is just a natural counterbalance to my anxiety and worry. And so we use that, especially in our homeschooling. For my 8-year-old in particular, his where the brain tumor is, it is literally right outside of the amygdala. So we have a lot of emotional regulation issues. And so when he is trying new things, he's always like, I'm not good at this. And we're like, nobody, you're just starting out. It's okay. You're not going to be. And like, it can go into full meltdown mode and I'll bear you all that. But we find that when we turn his clock a little bit, we turn his brain and his thinking, and we're like, okay, but wait, what is God showing us in this? And how can we be thankful for that? Like it automatically shuts him down to a little bit. He probably blows up still a little bit, but it's not as bad as it could probably get. Which it can get bad. So like when being able to turn it off and turn it on, like, hey, I've created this routine, so to speak, to see that whether there's this challenge that's in front of me, I can learn something from it and I can appreciate that God's put it in front of me. And like that's a thinking that I really feel is something that all kids should be instilled in, but at least for me and I do that for my kids, like I feel like it's helping set them with their like further routines. But so
Yeah,
that's kind of how we get through.
that's a great thing to include in your routine is thankfulness and gratitude because it does if you are grateful every single day, it will get rid of all those negative attitudes inside of you. So, but we have to teach our kids. It's not just something, I mean, we have a sin nature and we want to complain and whine, and you've got to change that attitude. If you do it as a kid, oh, they're so much more ready for life and everything. Those are great ideas. I love the tools that you're sharing, and then just the must do's to be able to have a good routine. And those are things, whether you're in a trial or not, all of those are ideas that you can use, I think, in your homeschool. But when you're in the trial, those are some things we really need to focus on. Can you? I know you sort of mentioned this, the character building, the life skills. Is there anything else that you would want to mention as far as developing those in our kids in the midst of adversity?
Um, yeah, I mean, some unique life skills that we get just by going through the challenges is, like I said before, was resilience and adaptability and solving skills. But the other thing that, especially I see this with my 14-year-old, is he's really grown to be empathetic and compassionate. Um, he's not so great with the next one, which for my other son I can say he is, but time management and self-discipline are something my 14-year-old is definitely trying to still hone in and grasp. But for my older son, like he's getting it and he's like, okay, I get it. Like if I do this, this is my consequence. So I need to make sure I'm getting it done in the timely fashion. He also holds a job, so takes the responsibility to be able to self-discipline and maintain his routine and stay focused on still his educational goals, but also developing his because he's gonna be 18 soon. Oh, just makes me happy and sad all at the same time. Like I'm not ready for an 18-year-old. But it also, going through these trials, especially when you're homeschooling, another thing that you don't even realize they develop is this perseverance. Because especially if I see this in my older two, more so, is that they get pushed to the side. Like, and it's not intentional. It's not like we're purposely trying to push them to the side. It's just that the things that are going on with our 8-year-old and our 3-year-old because he's a toddler and he needs a lot of attention because he's a toddler. And then our 8-year-old with all of his medical stuff, they get pushed to the wayside. And so them real like going through that and but still persevering through it, it's developing this trait that is allowing them to achieve things that they don't even realize because they know to be patient, and they know that okay, yes, this is a crappy situation that we're going through, but God's bringing me through. And they can't explain it sometimes. I can't even explain it sometimes how I'm getting through it. I always just say, it's God's grace, it's God's grace, it's God's grace. But there's these developing characteristics that you don't even really realize are helping them gain these real world experiences and shaping their character and equipping them for these essential life skills for future success.
So, so good. And, I think too often as moms, we want to protect our kids and not have them walk through anything bad. And sometimes God's saying,
Mhm.
well, you know what? You're going to protect them, but I've got a different plan and you're not going to be able to protect them just like you. I mean, y'all have to do things and your older kids have to deal with it too, and yet it grows their faith independently. They will be stronger people when they leave. And then the other thing I was thinking about is just the idea of beauty from ashes. The trials are ashes. They're sort of a pain in the rear, and yet God can bring really good things from it. And you've mentioned so many good things that have been happening. You've also mentioned your faith in God so many times. So, how have you relied on your faith to really navigate all of these challenges? Or how have you not? No, no. Like, how could you get through a day without faith? Anyway, go ahead.
No, no, you're good. You're good. I mean, for me, one of the biggest things is I keep leaning into God, and I've learned that God's definition of surrender is different from my definition of surrender. Um, because if you think about it, like for many people, the definition of surrender is this worldly definition. It's this where we still have control over things, but we surrender it enough that okay, it's gonna be okay. I can still can feel some sense of control. I lost that a while ago. I can't even say how long it's been, but I lost it a while ago. And part of that came into play is that I don't have control over what is going on with my child to an extent. I mean, I do have a voice and I'm a huge advocate for a lot of things, his medications and speaking up when he's in pain and all these major things that we need to do as parents. But there's a lot of things that trickle out that come into this. Okay, but the example I could really give is him in reading. Like, I could be sitting there and comparing him to all these other 8-year-olds, and yet I've surrendered to God. Hey, I know that this is not going to be the way that you want it to look, and because I've embraced that, it's really helped to let me live literally by God's grace. And most days I say that's how we even get through the day because I a little known fact about me, I'm actually allergic to caffeine. And so, um, all of this stress obviously can tire a person out. And so my husband, like, he's a coffee drinker and drinks tons and tons of coffee and he's got so much energy to go. I burn out. And yet I find at the end of the day when I'm like just at that end where I'm like, I cannot keep going through, I talk to God and I pray and I'm in this constant prayer with him and I'm telling him all the time, like, hey, help me with this, or can you, do this, or thank you for that. And because I have that constant communication with him, I'm finding, okay, he's gonna give me the strength when I need to get through things. He's going to hold me up through the challenges, so to speak. Um, I I'm a huge component of breath prayers. I something else that I say a lot to even my kids to remind them is that prayer isn't a ritual. It's a conversation. It is like our telephone, so to speak, to God, because he might not necessarily be right in front of us. So if we need to think of that picture of that, okay, we're just on a phone call with him 24/7, that's how you can visualize it. And how does that work? It's just like having a conversation with anybody else that you're having. And you might not get the response back the way that, the world thinks of it as somebody talking to you, but you're going to get that response. It's going to come through in a voice that you're going to hear, or through music. I That's a really big one for me. Like, I listen to music and I find like that's God speaking to me, because there'll be songs that come on and it's like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of it that way, God, thank you. And being able to worship, even just and remind myself, like, God is great. He is full of love, and he is just has such sovereignty over these situations. I can't not embrace the grace that he's providing for me by holding on to the faith of what he's given. um I think one of the other big things is that, um when you get yourself into sharing, eventually it comes about. You just have to share your story. You have to tell your story. When you do that, you're recounting so many times that you've seen God be so faithful in your life. It's like that one helps provide this strength and resilience, and in seeing what he's done, but it also is like this reflection of like, wow, I can say so many different countless stories of how God has shown up in my life. And it's not this like sunshine and rainbows type of perspective that people in the worldly perspective kind of make it out to be, like, oh, the sun is shining and the trees are beautiful and there's birds singing and that's God. And it's like, yeah, that is God. But God is also helping you pay your bills, or helping sit by you when you were in the hospital with your child who just got out of one of his brain surgeries, or he's there when your child is having a meltdown because one plus one is not two. Like, that was like when way back when he was like first learning math. He was like, it's not two. And I'm like, it's two, buddy. It's two. Like these homeschool challenges that we can kind of come through and face. God's there, and you don't necessarily see it in the moment, but when you reflect on it and share your story with other people, you see it in so many facets. And it's like it just becomes this intentional turning point of and foundation, not just for homeschooling, but for your life in general and your relationship with God. And whether it's the trials or it's the homework or it's just being a parent, like, having God be the center, it lights everything up and creates this vibrancy that is in this dull, colorless world that we've got going so many times throughout the day. Like, it just becomes this, I don't know, this vibrancy. I can't think of a better word. Just this vibrancy, and I constantly remind myself, that's God. That's God.
It is so much, gosh. And I don't know about y'all, and I don't know if you're listening or if you're watching this podcast, but I hope you can see that Lisa has joy in the midst of trials. And I think that is one thing we're going for. You've said it's God's grace, and she's given herself grace and her kids. I mean, I've always said that I've been told the average age to learn to read is 8 years old, plus or minus 4 years. So that means from 4 to 12, a kid may learn to read. And sometimes those 12-year-olds are a much better reader as an adult than the ones that learn at 6, 7, or 8. That's my own 2 cents for y'all. But joy just exudes from her. And so I just really I appreciate your story. And whether you're in the middle of a trial now, if you have not been walking through trials, sooner or later you're going to. So take some of these ideas and put them into practice. And a lot of this can be done whether you're in a trial now or not. So I really appreciate that. I know you have something really special that y'all are working on. Could you tell our listeners just a little bit about it?
Yes, so I'm excited. Shortly after this releases will be our Vibrant Home Life Summit. This year we're looking at it as a Christian family revival, where we are looking to breathe life into hearts and of each individual that attends, and foster a passion to have a vibrant life anchored in God's boundlessness and boundless love and grace. And it's a 5-day event. There are a lot of workshops. I know, Carrie, you are one of my speakers, and so your message will definitely be heard there as well. But the speakers have such amazing, beautiful messages and how God has worked in their lives and how He can help work through yours. And especially with the way that we have this cultural agenda going on. That's one of our topics that we picked to attack a little bit and try to help people with, because there how do we go up against that? How do we, still have that faith foundation, but also not to live unchrist-like through it, because you do see that a lot in the chaos of the world. So that is April 29th through May 3rd. And everyone who purchases a ticket has lifetime access, and they're able to upgrade to a little bonus package that we did put together as well. And but either package they pick, they get the lifetime access. So even if they can't make it necessarily that week, they'll still be able to have access later on. And I'm telling you, these messages are just amazing, and they hit every level. Like, it could be parent, not parent, family, not family, old, young, everything in between. Like, we've kind of hit every single level. But it's a Christian summit, and I'm super excited to have pulled it together. And I talk about God being and seeing how His grace is. Like, it is literally His grace that this has come together. I mean, I could not attest to anything to except God and Him exuding some strength in me right now, because we're literally dealing with all of this stuff with our 8-year-old, and yet I'm still running and putting a summit together. A little crazy.
Well, I can tell y'all this summit is an overflow of what she's walked through because of her growth with Jesus Christ and with God, as they've walked through this, and all of a sudden they're like, you know what, we need to get help out to parents and grandparents and whomever. There, wherever you're listening to this, either in the show notes or description, there will be a link right there that you can go and sign up for this as well. I have the dates as April 29th through May 3rd. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Perfect. Let me just tell you that if you use my link right below wherever you're listening to this, and you sign up, I have a special gift for you. It's called Walking with God. It's a kids Bible study series. It's you can do it 5 weeks or 5 days or whatever, but it's stories about walking with God in the Bible. And for each one of the stories, there's a memory verse, there's crafts, there's snacks, there's songs, there's all such sorts of fun things that you can do. So it really is geared towards kids. And I just think that goes right along with what they're talking about with this vibrant home life and encouraging us in the faith, but we also want to encourage our kids as well. So I just want to make sure y'all go sign up. This is going to be an awesome event. So I'm super excited about that.
Me
Um,
too.
as
I'm
we
excited to see how many
close, is
families
there,
it blesses.
say that again?
I'm excited to see how many families it's going to bless, for sure.
Yes, it will be a blessing, guys. And the thing is, you have access to it. I'm going to be talking about one tool that I believe has grown me to maturity. And let me tell you, I've known about it all my life, but the trials I've walked through in the last 8 years, God's like, I'm going to teach you a little bit more, and you're going to land in joy and peace, victory and healing, and there's one more, victory, I think. I can't remember the last one. Anyway, y'all get there. There's going to be great topics. Well, as we close, is there any closing words that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Sure, yeah. I would say that yes, you probably don't have trials as extensive as mine. Um, Even I would say is look at the trials that you're growing through just in homeschooling. There's the learning challenges that come every single day, not just in their education, but even being a parent and homeschooling, and embracing the grace that's God is just helping you through and showing you how to get through the different things. It's something to constantly be a reflection, um and know that no matter what the challenge is, whether it's big or small, that it's just that it's a challenge, it's a trial, it's something that Even if it's a longer trial, it's still something you're going to come out of. And once you do, you're going to have a story to tell and you're going to be able to see how God has walked you through it. And being able to embrace that, that is just a huge piece because the biggest way you're going to see the reflection of it is through your kids. And that's the I feel like one of the major reasons we all homeschool, in my opinion, in my world, in my brain. That's where it sits with me is if you're instilling that in your kids, you've literally just put a foundational level that is just huge for them. It's something that sets them up for a huge piece of success because they're going to be thrown a lot, especially in years to come, I'm sure. That's my
True.
final
Yeah.
thoughts.
And if they don't learn the chemical chart or whatever, who cares? But if they walk with God and they keep walking with God, you have been a successful parent. So I really appreciate you pointing us in that direction. So thanks so much for spending time with us today, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And I am Carrie Beck with Homeschool Coffee Break. We'll talk to you next time.